Oh, yeah. Oh, is that?
Oh, I was just.
We usually do the count-ins, you guys.
My God.
Hi,
it's
welcome.
Mayhem.
We're professionals.
Clearly.
Air quotes around that. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Dragon Talk. We have some amazing people here to speak to. We have Wes Schneider. Hello.
Yay! We have a live studio audience. Woo! Yeah! Oh, look.
What else am I here?
Oh, we got a huge fan of you
Up
out
to
there.
3 people in the audience. 5 of people are here.
Here, you can put this right in your mouth hole
It's
if you can.
theater of the
Fantastic.
mind.
Yes. And then we have Mr. Chris Perkins.
Hi.
Yay!
Yeah!
I love Milo. Oh, we got a big fan of your dog.
I'm a big Milo fan. I love that you have to tell the joke after you do it. You're like, oh, by the way, they like Milo.
I can
They
bring my
don't
dog
know.
next
They
time.
don't think. What?
Could
I
you?
can bring my dog next time.
What?
It's-
Yeah.
Can you?
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll bring our dog to podcast day.
Can we interview him?
Sure.
Okay.
You guys have just scripted like 3 special sessions with Chris, like
We
while
have.
we've been here.
I know.
That's how this
We're gonna
works.
bring
Yeah,
you back.
exactly.
Gonna bring you back to talk to your dog. Can you?
I don't talk to them normally.
This is the only chance we get.
That sounds nice.
Wow.
So this is
On your show, no less.
many of
Is it?
Dragon
Oh,
Talk
no.
listeners' introductions to Wes. This is the straight fire that we get here in the office.
That's right. This is the banter that you usually have to be sitting within 5 feet of me to get.
Exactly. So I'm going to tell you again. You got to be up on the microphone,
yep,
or
yep.
else Lisa will get mad at you.
Don't be comfortable. I've got.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Yeah.
Try to sit up straight, and
Lick
but
it.
you can move it anywhere. You just, apparently you're in the area that's hardest to get to
Okay.
with the
Okay.
with
Sorry,
the
Mom.
arms. I'm sorry. So yeah, who are you? For anyone who doesn't know, who is Wesley Schneider?
Absolutely. I'm Wes Schneider, as was stated already. I'm the editor here on Dungeons and Dragons. I've been working on D&D in some capacity or permutation since the early aughts, starting as an assistant editor on Dragon Magazine.
Oh.
When I
and
was 5.
yeah, right. Too long ago. And then, I've been working here at Wizards for about the last year on D&D, and Tyranny of Dragons is one of the first projects that I've had a hand in helming and whatnot. So it's about to
Really?
come out,
This is-
and we're here to talk to you guys about it.
This
Yeah.
is great.
On your show, which you two run.
You also
Any other?
A lot of air
Also-
quotes going around here.
You are also a contributor to Widow's Walk.
It's true.
You wrote one of the haunts.
Absolutely.
Yes.
I've had the pleasure of working with Shelley at least one time before.
At least. And you also edited Dungeon Mayhem.
Yep.
So there.
Lots of projects. Lots of projects
You got
under
a
your belt.
long rap sheet.
When did you start playing D&D or RPGs? Was that early on, and then it was
Pretty early on. So probably, middle school age and whatnot, 12, 13, that sort of deal.
What drew you in? What was the story? Is there an origin story for you?
Oh, yeah. We started playing Vampire.
Ooh.
We started playing Vampire, but didn't really grok the setting. So we started playing Vampire in the Forgotten Realms.
Whoa.
Like you do.
Yeah.
Like no one does.
Like
Who
no one
was
does.
this? This
Nobody
is you
grokes
and
Seattle.
some friends.
Me and some friends, yeah. So we started playing that and decided, like, hey, maybe instead of Vampire in this, like, weird campaign setting with, like, the swords and the monsters and the dragons and whatnot, which we're more gravitating towards than vampires, maybe we take this in a direction that, like, is actually what the game says on the tin and play D&D.
Oh.
So still had a lot of fun with Vampire and whatnot, but very much went that sort of direction after that instead of trying to kit bash our own game from
Were you the dungeon master? Or
every single time.
Oh,
Really?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, as soon as I learned, like, hold on, this is a thing that you get to do. Like, you get to hold these people's lives in the palm of your hand. Yes, always.
So
Why
you're
wouldn't
bossy.
I do that? Yes.
And a control freak.
I mean, I'm an editor.
And you like to tell people all the things they do wrong. Is
There's
that true?
there's a lot of ways
Answer
to
us,
phrase
Wes.
these things.
Not to put words in your mouth.
That's an editor. No. So did you? Were you the ones then that introduced your friends to D&D? If you were the dungeon master, were you the one that discovered it?
That was like 300 years ago.
Yeah.
Like,
Wait, I thought you were 5.
something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I think so. I was the one that definitely started steering us more in the D&D route, into something that was less like, here, let's have modern, deep feelings about cities we've never been to in the real world and like bloodshed, into like, let's imagine places and bloodshed.
A young Wesley.
Young Wesley already molding people's lives.
That's right. Just as
Yes.
much gray hair, though.
Oh, so you were like Steve Martin?
Yes.
Went gray very early. That's really cool. I love the idea of being a dungeon master through and through. Was it just because no one in your friend group wanted to jump in and do it, or is it just you just love that role?
Oh, like for me, the monsters have always been the best part of the game. So it's like, oh, this is the role where you get to play the monster. Oh, you get to play all the monsters. Oh, I get to play this whole book of monsters. Yes, absolutely. That. You're going to play a fighter. Okay, well, enjoy playing a fighter. I'm going to play all of these monsters.
That's cool.
I've got eye rays and mind blasts and fangs and
So many more cooler abilities. So good. We've established that you're a monster.
Yep,
Good.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Good to know.
Is that
why we hired
still
him.
your preferred
exactly.
role?
Oh, 100%.
Still?
I'm so much more comfortable DMing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Cool.
So what was it like getting your first? You said the early 2000s. How did you get into writing professionally then?
I was a freelancer for Dragon Magazine for a good long while. I decided, like, at some point in middle school, like when the career counselor comes around, it's like, okay, so which, like, heavy metals welding job would you like to perform as an adult? I was like, I would like to be the editor-in-chief of Dragon Magazine.
Whoa.
And they were like,
You got a similar path to this guy.
they put you in a special room.
Pretty much. They were very much like, we don't know what that is. And that sounds a lot like cult leader. So you go over there. But yeah, after that, running many games with like a bunch of friends, got into took more of an English and a journalism route in high school and college, and then from there got out of college and was like, Dragon Magazine is hiring for an assistant editor.
No
Let me
way.
put in for that. Got that job, moved from Baltimore, Maryland out to here, and been here ever since.
Seriously, that's how, like, really you saw the job listed that you
Yeah.
wanted.
Like 2 months after wrapping up college. So
Fritz, you had a similar, he did the kind of the same
Yeah,
thing.
I decided at a very early age I was going to be the editor of Dungeon Magazine.
Not Dragon.
Right. Because I was big into adventures. That's why.
Yeah.
Crazy.
And that's where I landed.
And didn't Shauna Wolf Narciso also follow up on an ad with just like, yep, I'm just going to apply and see
I
if
did.
I can get in there. You did
it's
too?
wild.
I mean, I didn't know it was for Wizards, though, because it just said promotions coordinator. Send resume. Send it. Like, go print it on, like, nice, thick paper that you can't afford because...
Oh, so this was the Dark Ages.
It was. And it said P.O. Box, blah, blah, blah. I had no idea what the company was. None.
Strange.
Wow. And you just ended up here. At least these guys had a clear, like, I want to work for a publication.
No. I just wanted a job. I didn't have a career counselor come around in middle school or high
You didn't
school or
scare them?
college. This is how I ended up as a theater major.
Nice.
That sounds fun.
I can relate.
But it's practical. I mean, here, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, many
So
years
you're
later.
you're flexing your theater muscles.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All the voices that you're throwing? Yeah, it's all right here.
Theater. Wait, I had a new one. I have a new voice.
Oh.
I'm too scared now. I don't remember how I did it.
This was just like school.
This happens more often than you think.
I'm Raven from Teen Titans, right? It's Raven. Do you watch Teen Titans?
No.
Oh,
We're
I
gonna
nailed it.
It's
I nailed it.
It's got some Daria in there too from MTV.
I don't know Daria.
You never watched that in the
No.
90s? Well, anyway.
Anyway.
We digress.
Back
to Tyranny of Dragons. So it's been 5 years since 5th edition came out, which is insane. That's a real sentence that just came out of my mouth. What was it like? I mean, we've talked a lot about developing the core rule books and stuff like that, but these first adventures and how we wanted to focus on dragons. What was that all?
Oh, it's all such a blur because as this dragon story was getting life breathed into it, Jeremy and I were in the throes of pushing the core rule books and the starter set out the door,
yeah.
which is why we turned to Kobold Press to help us execute on the adventure.
Yes.
So Tyranny of Dragons was the name of the campaign And the adventures were called Hoard of the Dragon Queen and the Rise of Tiamat, as many people know. I don't remember exactly the circumstances that led to us splitting the adventure into 2 books, except I think it was a work effort thing. That it would have been too much of a demand, really, for us to coordinate with Kobold and get a big book out when we could stagger them out separately.
Right.
So it was originally conceived as a single unified
Volume.
story, but we split it up for practical reasons, and that allowed Kobold the time to give it the attention that it needed, and for them to ramp up their resources, because they had never done a 5th edition product before. They had to
Yeah, it was all
digest
new
the
to
new
them.
rule set, get people on board with that rule set, and then deliver an adventure that was pretty ambitious. It was touted at the time as Dragonlance in the Realms. And the reason we chose dragons, of course, is because the game's called Dungeons and Dragons.
I was going to ask.
And we wanted our first big story to have some Dungeons and Dragons in it.
Right. And
So-
some ampersands.
Yeah, we may have gone a little heavy on the dragons. But they're there, a whole bunch of them, including the big mama dragon herself, Tiamat, who had been bitching at us for years to feature her in a story.
Please
So
get me in.
it was, when you have 5 dragon heads screaming at you, use me!
Why did it take you so long to
Eventually.
listen to her?
Because she's in hell. So,
And she was then, right?
yeah.
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 But in Tyranny of Dragons, she gets out, or almost gets out. Gets as close to getting out as she's had in many, many years. And that's kind of what the story is about. It was crafted as, can you keep Tiamat locked away in the 9 hells, or will the forces that support her succeed in bringing her into the world?
Nice. And I think a lot of people don't realize just what a Herculean effort it was to get 3 core rule books, which are all 320 pages, out the door, the starter set, as well as the first big adventure. I mean, because most adventures before that were not of the sprawling size that,
Right.
that the 5th edition
Yes.
adventures have been. Most of them were of the 16 to 32 page.
Yeah, when 3rd
kind of
edition
variety.
launched, they launched an Adventure Path series that had, the Sunless Citadel and the Forge of Fury and so on and so forth. As
Yeah.
kind of their, let's go out the door. And that we just decided, hey, big book.
Yeah. And so that's a lot to try to do in one
Yeah.
year.
Yeah, yeah. And
and-
casting Revivify spells on Jeremy every Sunday after.
He died every weekend.
Yeah, and so the heavy lifting was how do we develop a story that incorporates all the major evil dragon types? How do we capture the sort of epicness of a Dragonlance scope story, but in the Forgotten Realms? Where do we set it? We had to make a decision to use the Sword Coast as the playground for that story.
Yeah.
Part of the reason for that is we knew that there was a site called the Well of Dragons, and that's located in the Heartlands, not too far from the Sword Coast. So that kind of made sense. But then we had to do a lot of behind-the-scenes development, like what do dragon cultists look like? What does Waterdeep look like in 5th edition? What does Neverwinter look like? What does the Sword Coast look like?
So
All
ho-
these things had to be addressed through concept art.
But how do they change? Like from edition, like what happens? What changes happen in the edition that you're working on that inform a change to what a city in the Forgotten Realms is going to look like, or what cultists look like?
Not necessarily the
Is
rules
it-
change.
It's just a need to refresh it, or is there actual a need to address something very different in a city now?
I think that, like, for instance, 5th edition is embraced inclusiveness and diversity in its system, in its art, in its storytelling. But we didn't see that reflected necessarily in some of the characters.
Right.
So some effort had to be taken in the story to make sure that we have diversity. And it's been a steady learning curve for us. Each new story is a new opportunity to even do a better job at it. But we were looking at the characters, looking at the villains, looking at everything, looking at the cities, the settings, and trying to figure out what needs to change about the Forgotten Realms to make it feel more contemporary to our contemporary audience, as
Oh, yeah.
opposed to just presenting the realms as it existed when it was first created back in the 70s and 80s.
Yeah, it's a cool opportunity to
Yeah.
do that.
And sometimes the changes are almost invisible to most people, but they're important to us and they're important to the future of the world and where we're going.
That's a good point because it's not necessarily a refresh, as you're saying, but it's like a way to calibrate for how we're going to be presenting
That's a good word.
story content going forward.
Right, yeah. And we were, at the time Tyranny of Dragons being worked on, we were still trying to figure out what a 5th edition adventure was.
Yeah.
How is it structured? How do we want to build these things? How do we make it more useful to DMs? How do we make it easier for DMs to run? And, and then also trying to get Kobold in with that. And I think over time, we just continue to refine and develop how our adventures are presented, which is great because circling back around now, 5 years later, being able to release Tyranny of Dragons in its collected form, we can put some of those lessons about adventure design and adventure layout into practice, things we didn't know 5 years ago.
Yeah. And Wes, you said it's been in one of your big projects, coming in and taking these 2 volumes and smashing them into one. That's pretty much all you had to do, right? Was just get some tape. Get some tape.
Cut and paste.
Just peel the front cover off one, the back of the other, lick both sides, put them together.
Easy peasy.
Handled.
Yeah, that was like a half-hour project.
Yeah. So thanks for having us.
No problem. Yeah, good to go. Let's talk about cheese going forward then. No, but yeah, what was it like coming into this and having to, metaphorically do that?
So the situation was very much presented as, we've got these 2 books, we want to put them together. It shouldn't be too labor intensive because we've got the text already, all the art is here, so it'll be fine. Lick, slap, dumb. As we got into it, there are a number of other elements that go into the creation of making a book a coherent thing. And when 2 books have all of their coherent things, you wind up with a number of redundant organs when you're trying to put them together. So what we ended up doing as we were going through was, in addition to creating just a whole new introduction for the book, which aims much more at like, hey, this is a celebration of 5 years of design and this really epic adventure and whatnot. Let's create an introduction that feels more like it is for a campaign, an entire overarching epic feeling adventure rather than 2 individual things. So one of the big elements was going through and setting up, here's the villains, here's the heroes, here's all of the elements of this campaign that you're going to need to be paying attention to over the course of the entirety rather than just for this part or for this part.
Right.
So that ended up being one huge element of it. There's a number of smaller things that we can get into, but the other big addition was, since we now had the breadth of an entire major giant book, we ended up adding in a whole new appendix that, as Chris was talking about, there was so much work done on creating new looks for the edition, new looks for the characters, new looks for dragons, so much thought put into like what some of the villains like the Cult of the Dragon might look like. We had a ton of fantastic art that had never seen the light of day. So we ended up creating a whole new 30-some page concept art gallery that really explored all of that work.
Right, and that I didn't realize it was 30 pages. That's a lot of pages.
Yeah, it's pretty significant.
And it was a lot of the reconceptualization that you were talking about, Chris.
Yeah, a lot of that art was originally created to fill a story Bible. And story Bibles are things that we put together to support a marketing campaign built around a product or an adventure idea. And we're all familiar with them, but a lot of people probably don't know what goes into them. But it's kind of like a product that we never release.
Yeah.
And they're not big, but they tend to be very art heavy and very heavily art directed. And there is a lot of good art which doesn't end up in the product because a lot of the concept art isn't taken to its final state.
Yeah, those story guides they've been instrumental for me in my job as far as understanding what's the important parts of the stories that we're going to be coming out with in years to come, and we use them.
It touches on
so
key
many
themes of the story,
which
we often don't overtly talk about in the products themselves, but are important for the look and feel.
Yeah,
it is also key to our business partners to have these so that they can riff on the story. So Cryptic, who works on our Neverwinter MMO, they may not tell the story literally the same way we do it in a printed book, but they'll take elements from the story guide and recombine them into something that feels like it belongs as in this family of products that we're putting together for the story.
Yeah. And that was something that you didn't do in previous editions,
No,
right?
no, we did not have story Bibles prior to 5th edition.
Yeah, and I think that, did you make one for Tyranny of Dragons?
I did.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. So that was like the first kind of iteration of that.
Yeah.
I would love
and
to see that.
It was actually, by today's standards of story guides, it was a little bloated. We've shortened them down and tightened them up since. I think Tyranny of Dragons was like a 64-page book.
Ouch.
Whereas the one I finished a few months ago for a future unnamed product was 16.
Yeah.
Whoa, that's a big difference.
Yeah.
Do you write the story Bible after the story is done, or does the story Bible inform the actual work that's getting done?
It is usually written before anybody outside the company has to do anything with it. But we often put together the story Bible at the same time we're working on products internally tied to it, and one can inform the other.
That's a really good like starting point. I'm glad that we get to show that stuff at the end
know.
of this Tyranny of Dragons
I
product.
kind of love that idea for future projects or
Yeah.
products. Just, I mean, to see that art. No, like not to give you extra work, an extra 30-some
Oh,
pages of
what?
every
Yeah,
book. But
speaking of extra work,
I love that idea.
one of the things, and Wes can talk about this a little bit more, that we had an opportunity to do with Tyranny of Dragons, which we don't usually get to do with our adventures, is incorporate feedback.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's just over the course of having anything out in the wild for 5 years, we've got a ton of feedback back from the audience on, oh, this encounter didn't quite land for us, or we'd like to see this adjusted, or whatever have you. So in the course of reopening the patient, which we so rarely get to do beyond just like errata updates, we ended up
Why are you having so many bodily dismemberment metaphors?
No.
because every
Redundant
part
organs.
of creating one of these books is sloppy and messy and dangerous.
Wait, that's not how I think of surgeries.
Bloody.
Can I talk to your doctor? Because I think there's something wrong.
Oh, was I implying surgery? I'm sorry.
Just a typical Friday night for Wes.
He did say he did start playing vampires, so that makes a little bit of sense.
So in going
Bloodshed.
back through the right. So in going back through this, we've had the opportunity to incorporate a ton of that. In addition to just throughout the entire book being able to just go through and, tighten up language here and there or make minor adjustments to the rules or whatever have you. Some of the big elements have been like one of the major responses that we got to the first adventure was that the opening encounters are a real meat grinder. It's like, I really would love to play this campaign, but I keep dying
dead.
to the
Chapter 1.
first monster.
No one knows how it ends.
Exactly. So that's been something where we've gone back and we've taken a pretty solid look at the entire first series and encountered, rebalanced those, and set that up in such a way that it does a better job of guiding you into the full campaign rather than just being like, this is a wall, get over it, or
Don't
play.
Yeah. And a lot of that was instrumental in it being the first adventure, right? Like being able to learn the new system, how to test boundaries. I mean, it was a big task for Wolfgang's team at Cobalt to be able to take all that.
And they didn't have the luxury of a great deal of playtesting time. They could do some internal playtests at the time, but not much else.
Yeah.
Later adventures, we build in more playtesting time.
Right, because there's a
Lessons learned.
schedule that's not having to do
exactly.
3 core rule books at the same time.
Precisely.
Yeah. That's great. And I mean, I want to ask this question because it's probably strange, but like given the work that you guys have done for decades on RPGs, have you ever had the chance to go back 5 years and do a reissue of something like this?
It's pretty rare.
Yeah.
Like
I mean,
when
I guess you could say editions are like that, but this is a little bit more like, hey, we can finally refine what we want to do.
Yeah. I mean, typically, and we were just joking about this a little earlier, like typically when something goes out the door, it's like, all right, this has gone to the printer. There is already the next project and the next project and the next project to think about. So rarely do you have the opportunity to be like, ooh, now that we've, discovered this other technology, we would have done it like this had we the time.
Right. New editions notwithstanding. Like I've worked on a number of monster manuals over the years.
Yeah.
You could say that they're continuations of one another or developments of one another. But in the 600 to 1,000 different RPG products I've worked on, I don't remember the last time it's happened. So this is a rare thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's pretty cool, I think, for people who have come into Dungeons & Dragons more recently than 5 years. ago to be able to go back and get this, this first flavor and taste of what 5th edition storytelling could be like.
Yeah, with a nice Hydro 74 cover.
I know
Gorgeous.
that cover is
That cover.
amazing.
Oh, it's amazing.
Showing Tiamat and all 5 of her heads
Yep.
in all of their glory.
She's beauty.
Yep.
I love Tiamat.
Chris even worked in a quote in Draconic on the back of it, which folks will have to get the book to see to decipher it. But
Yes, they can use the Draconic cipher that's in the player's handbook.
Sweet. Oh, that'll be fun.
Yeah.
Does it say I love Milo?
No, but it should. But everybody knows that. I mean, really.
Does Tiamat use all 5 of her heads to speak? Or
Yeah.
does
Do they all speak at the same time, or do they take turns?
That's a good question. So,
Thank you.
it's like a second delay.
yeah, so the brains are all sort of wired together, so it's more like they're finishing each other's sentences.
I feel like that could get really annoying trying to talk to her.
Do they have
Well,
different personalities?
Well, you've been in a room with 5 executives, right? So
Well, mostly it's just like,
it's kind of the same thing.
what's I mean,
No, but seriously, it's kind of creepy.
Yeah.
When you realize that they're all kind of hardwired into each other's thoughts.
It reminds me of, and I'm not sure this is what you're going for, but
It's different from Demogorgon, by the way, who argues with his heads.
Yeah, they actually have
They're
distinct
conflicting
personalities.
personalities,
Yeah. But it reminds me of the eels from The Little Mermaid.
Yeah,
How they
Flotsam and
talk over
Jetsam.
each other and,
Yeah,
and are
exactly.
basically finishing others' thoughts the whole
It's
time.
very much like that. Yeah.
so
Ooh, that's
I
creepier
guess
in a way.
I've always just accepted Tiamat as a 5-headed dragon, but now that I think about her, what the hell happened there?
Well, there was some surgery where they had to add organs.
An editor came
And just attach the heads.
and just kept
Yeah, it's
cutting and pasting
It's
dragons.
funny you should mention that because every time we tackle Tiamat as a miniature, artists can often hide things when they portray her in an illustration.
Yeah.
But where her parts join and where red turns into blue, turns into green, turns into black, where that all blends, it's really, really hard to pull off a miniature, as it turns out.
Oh,
And we don't even think about it most of the time.
right.
So the answer to your question is she is what she is, and she has always been. She doesn't have a mama, she doesn't have a papa, so she wasn't made in a traditional way.
That's so sad.
She is.
I mean, that's why she's a villain, right?
And she's never
Just
she's,
like
she's
Kesha.
never had children.
She's had consorts, but I don't think that they're consorts they're just, token male dragons to keep around, to keep her company.
Dragon
not.
Boy toys.
Yeah.
Dragon boy toys. She doesn't make little Tiamats
No.
or even really little dragons.
Draconians. Oh, no. That's different.
Well, there's a conversation. But draconians are made in a weird ass way, which if we haven't talked about in a lore, you should know we should.
We totally should.
Yeah.
And then also the Tachesis versus Tiamat.
Matt. Right.
Yeah.
They're the same.
Are they? What if they get into a fight? I don't know. Who would win?
In a mirror?
I don't.
It's a 10-headed dragon.
I don't understand time travel. I get too overwhelmed. I'm like, I don't know what. I can't stop.
Can you imagine how Bahamut feels? He's only got one head.
No. But I don't understand this Tachesis, Tiamat. Like it's
Oh.
this, it feels like time travel to me. Like I'm just not gonna think about it too long because it's.
Well, you could imagine that
No, I probably can't.
two different worlds might call the same thing two different things.
Two different. Okay. All right.
Yeah. So there's
But they
that.
look different.
Do they though? I mean, additions being what they are, that's actually true, because we've changed
Thank God.
to some extent the dragon heads on some of our dragons. Like the black dragon, for instance, changed dramatically between editions.
In what way?
It's, we now know it with these sort of curved, sloping, forward-pointing horns.
Yes.
The black dragon head, as it appears on Tiamat on the cover of DL14 Dragons of Triumph, has straight horns that go back.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What
And that
was-
was true in the original, that was the original design of the black dragon back in first edition.
So why did it change?
Oh, well, that's a huge conversation.
It is?
Yeah, it mostly centers around the reconcepting of dragons for third edition that was done by Sam Wood and Todd Lockwood.
And actually, a lot of that art is in this product in the art gallery in the back.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Really?
Yep, along with little notes on here's how it would swim, and here's where it would breathe, and this is what a baby looks like, and
Oh, I gotta see that.
so on and so forth.
But like, did it change because it was based on like, this is like physically, like physics would prevent this, like, or is it just like,
No, it
is
was
not aesthetics? Like, what is it?
It was largely an aesthetic change,
Okay.
and there was as the dragons were being reconcepted for 3rd edition and modeled in terms of their body structure after cats.
Oh,
That sort of led the artists down the road of playing with the dragon heads a little bit to make their profiles more distinct, so that if you saw them in silhouette, they'd be more differentiated from one
okay, I
another.
can see that.
Other than just the color, you could look at
Yeah.
Correct.
And
Yeah,
see.
if you were looking
You
at
would
black
know
silhouettes
a
of them,
silhouette
you would know
recognize.
Yeah.
the black dragon from the green, from the white, from the red.
Interesting.
And I love how WizKids has been using the dragon heads trophies,
Yeah.
and we have several of them hanging.
We
here
have a
in the
big
office.
dragon, black dragon head one, and we have a red dragon head one. So
Yeah,
far in
and
the
relative
office.
proximity to each other.
Yes.
So it's really cool to see the two of them and note the differences and what they mean.
When we get all 5, Tiamat will officially be dead.
Well, that's going to be the first. If WizKids does do the green and the
Yeah.
blue and the,
The
white,
white. Yeah.
then that's going to be some surgery. We're going to have to cut them all up, paste them all together, and literally make a life-size Tiamat.
Make your own 1/4 size Tiamat.
This
Or
seems-
for Halloween, we can have 5 people in the apartment dress up with Tiamat heads
Oh my gosh.
and run around as a Tiamat.
You just gave me, that just triggered a memory for me. A story that you once told me about.
Way to go! You set yourself up for that one.
I mean, it's a little off topic, but once you told me a story about a Halloween costume when you had quite the ordeal,
My costume fail.
your
Yeah.
costume failed. Could you please tell the story again,
Yes.
Mr. Perkins? Please?
When I was of an age that could be summarized in single digits, my
Okay.
mother made me a Halloween costume. I was a robot, and the robot costume was basically a tinfoil covered box that covered my head,
Okay.
with a tinfoil covered bigger box that covered my torso, with my arms stuck out with tinfoil wraps around them, and my legs sticking out the bottom of the big box with more tinfoil wraps, and then shoes that were basically Kleenex boxes wrapped in tinfoil.
God, clever. This is
Good
before
stuff.
That's good
Pinterest,
stuff.
okay?
Box, shoes,
Right.
arms and legs sticking out. Anyway, because the big box basically was my entire torso down to my knees, I had no flexibility in my body. So as I was climbing up a very, very small hill, it must have been maybe like 2 feet high, to get to a neighbor's door, I slipped and toppled over, and I could not get back up. So imagine this 7-year-old kid flailing around on his back in a robot costume on some stranger's lawn. Other kids walking by, and I'm just going, help,
Help!
help,
Help me!
Help me. Help.
and nobody would stop and help me.
Why? That's the part that really crushes me.
I assume
did
because
they
it was
take
funny.
Your candy? Did they take, you're lucky this was before Facebook or any social media. But did they take your candy?
I didn't get my candy stolen. No.
Okay, good.
No.
They weren't that mean.
Yeah.
But nobody came to help. Maybe they thought it was part of your costume. Like you were like,
Were you
oh,
making-
he's
Maybe.
flailing robot.
Yes.
Beep noises.
So it was very sad.
Eventually, like, because you are here and you're not wearing a robot costume, somebody helped you,
Mhm.
right?
Um,
Could it have been
Eventually, we must assume
eventually,
since you're
yes.
here.
Eventually,
Could have
yes.
been.
Because I was not getting up on my own.
Was it Tiamat?
I don't remember.
Has this story ever informed anything you've ever written?
Might have
for
been Princess
D&D?
Leia.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Seems like her.
Has this story ever informed
Yes.
anything?
Anything you've ever written.
It's made me hate science fiction with a burning passion.
Oh,
You're like, I'll
see?
never be
I
a
feel
robot
like
again.
It's just that story stays with me all
Yeah.
just forever.
Yeah. It's a pretty hilarious image.
Were you trick or treating alone
Yeah.
at 7?
It was Canada.
Oh,
Yeah.
in Canada you can do that.
Yeah. it was a more innocent time.
Yeah, I know, because kids don't do that now.
That's kind of sad.
I know they're
Yeah.
almost not even allowed to go to houses.
Yeah.
Whatever.
I mean,
know.
we didn't go around with flashlights, nothing. Just big garbage bags to hold all the candy in.
Yes. Oh, I remember that. Hoarding
Yeah.
my candy until Valentine's Day.
Mhm.
Like a horde of the Dragon Queen.
Like a hoard of the Dragon Queen.
Yeah.
Back
Oh, and let
on
me tell you
topic.
something else. Halloween in Canada is cold. Okay? Like it was cold out there.
Yeah.
If I didn't stop flailing, I would have frozen to death.
So, but I'm wondering if like the tinfoil.
It makes it even crueler
made
that they didn't help you.
Like kept you a little warmer because
No.
you were covered in tinfoil.
No, it's just a hollow cardboard box.
You didn't have like a parka on under there?
She didn't
Oh,
make
I
you
don't
wear a
remember what I
winter
had
coat?
underneath. I'm sure I had
Layers.
something.
Did you
God,
get
my
layers?
mother wouldn't let me just go out with a cardboard box on me.
When you came home, were you really mad at your mom because she made this costume that made you fall down? And
I don't know.
she's a
I
lovely
love
woman.
that Shelley's like trying to get to the heart of this topic. She's like,
you'd have to hypnotize me and get that information because I just don't
Why
remember.
did you like this story, Shelley?
because she's cruel? Like
I do.
Tiamat?
Actually, it's funny you should mention that because
Like
when I did
Tiamat?
finally
Sad.
get home, I couldn't actually get up the steps into my house, so I had to stand out on the front stoop and just shout,
Mom,
"Let me in!
Mom.
Get this off!" That's all. Yeah.
Wow. And you were only 1 year old at the time.
Oh,
If you count,
Technically,
yeah.
yeah.
Well,
For leap year.
In leap years, I would have been 2. Yeah.
All right.
I think
I
it's
got a birthday
informed-
next year.
You do.
A real one?
Yeah.
We have a
I
leap
do.
year?
Yeah.
Nice.
2020. A lot of changes will be happening then. All right.
I sure hope so.
Yeah, me too. Tiamat is a wonderful character that we want to slay
Tiamat.
as much as we possibly can
don't share traumas
through
with
all
Shelley.
of.
Like, I feel like the story was a little sadder this time. But like the first time you
Okay.
said it, you might have said it with like more humor.
Oh,
Because
okay.
now
yeah.
I do have like a sense of sadness around me right now.
That sounds like something a robot would say.
That
You're
would
like,
pass.
I understand your human emotions now.
Yeah.
Tell me that super funny Halloween story.
Falling down, I can't get up.
I watched my dog get
Oh
hit
man,
by a
I've tried to
car.
segue away from this like 4 times. I'm like,
Keeps
let's keep
pulling
going
back.
back in.
Okay.
So you're a dragon. What do you do? So we've talked about all the fun things that are going to be in this Tyranny of Dragon, the cool cover,
All the pages.
all of the pages that
All
are
the
going to be in
extra
it.
pages.
But I realize now that there might be people who don't know what the basic storyline of Tyranny of Dragons was. What if someone who has not played through it, what would be some key selling points to be like, hey, this is a good time to jump in and replay this adventure?
So, some of the big elements are if you want your Dungeons and Dragons game to feature the Dungeons and the Dragons, I mean, that's right out the gate. The number of different locations that you go to through the course of this as you're fighting against the Cult of the Dragon, their whole deal is that they're on the cusp of bringing Tiamat into the Forgotten Realms and just having her lay waste to everything in a sort of ill-conceived, oh, I'm sure we'll be fine, like she won't destroy us sort of plot. But as you're fighting against various representatives of the Cult of the Dragon and their allies like the Red Wizards, you're just going up and down the Sword Coast, going through dungeons, facing off against Red Wizards, encountering every different shade of dragon what there is, and finally, by the climax of the adventure, taking the fight right to the Cult of the Dragon at the Well of Dragons, facing off against Tiamat, potentially, if you're not able to stop them from summoning her. If you fail at that, then she actually ends up, spoiler, busting through, and then you have to contend with a dragon goddess that you're probably it's going to be a challenge at 30. Yeah, and you're
30.
15th level.
Wow.
Enjoy.
Yeah.
Now, but the other thing that's cool about this, and it was very bold to do at the time, it has a lot of politics in it. So if you like political intrigue wrapped up with your dragons and your dungeons, this is the story for you, because part of your success hinges on you being able to build a coalition and to basically get armies together to help you deal with the coalition that's on Tiamat's side. So
And this
that's
was-
kind of interesting.
This was the introduction of the factions.
It was, yes. We had sort of crafted these 5 different player-friendly factions. I call them, they're not friendly necessarily factions, but they're player-friendly factions.
Player-friendly.
The Zentarum, the Harpers, the Emerald Enclave, the Order of the Gauntlet, and the Lord's Alliance. And we put a lot of effort into making sure that they each had their thing, their shtick, their selling points, their points of attraction, things like that. Different classes and different alignments would sort of gravitate toward different groups. But they were all kind of united in this down with Tiamat thing. And if you could get them all together and agree to provisions and terms and stuff in this story, then you could build a coalition to go off and fight. And not have to do everything by yourself. And that's a key element of the story, is making friends.
And as you were saying, if
Powerful friends.
Tiamat is on her own a challenge rating of 30,
Yeah.
plus all of her minions and all of her Cult of the Dragon, you need that coalition to be able to.
You need the
to deal
cities
with
of the
them.
Lord's Alliance on your side. You need the shadow network of the Zentarum backing you up, or the Harper spies to help you strike down Tiamat's allies wherever they rear their ugly heads.
What if you did go toe-to-toe without any of that help? What would happen?
You die. You die. Bloodshed.
Bloodshed.
Unless you have a very kind and generous DM. One of the other allied factions you can get, of course, the Good Aligned Dragons, because you can't tell Tyranny of Dragons story without, and what the chromatics are up to, without also talking about what the metallics can bring.
Oh, I don't think I ever got that far in
Yeah.
this adventure.
Yeah.
What? I didn't realize the metallics were involved.
Yes, there's even like a dragon moot in one of the chapters where you go and meet a bunch of them.
Really?
Yeah, there's a whole council where you go and meet up with a variety of dragons of different colors, and here's it presents the gist of each one of them, what they like, what will turn them off, and what you can do to win them over to your side.
And
That's awesome.
they will help you.
They might help you.
So what happened when you were talking about the different the alliances, the factions, and getting them on your side? What happens? Like, do you get some NPC help, or do
It
they
depends
give
on
you
the faction.
things to fight
Sometimes it's an army. Sometimes it's more subtle than that. Each faction can bring something different to the table.
Magic items, I assume, as well.
Yeah. Tools.
So Tiamat's on the cover, so it's
Yes.
pretty obvious that she's going to show up in this adventure. But if you thwart the cultist efforts to summon her, does the adventure end?
That is one of the win states. That is perhaps the most sane win state, because alternatively, it's as she's being summoned, there are other things that you can do to weaken her as she comes through,
Okay.
but better not to have that fight.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Because I feel like I want that fight. And now I feel like if I actually was successful in thwarting the cultists,
Yeah.
I'd be like, oh.
And if you got to go,
Sorry.
there are no worse ways to go,
Right?
really.
I mean, I kind of want to see what would happen.
Having 5 heads rip you apart. I mean,
Yeah. The
Sounds
damage
fun.
that you can do with 5 breath weapons will astonish you.
It would be horrible.
Yeah.
and for people who are playing Baldur's Gate Descent to Avernus, Tiamat is imprisoned upon that plane of Avernus.
That's right. She comes back.
And for people who they could take a lot of the stuff that's in Tyranny of Dragons and incorporate it with that subplot.
Yeah.
Right? How would you as Dungeon Master do that?
I'm not that mean. No.
Well, some characters
course I am.
who actually show up in Descent into Avernus are in Tyranny of Dragons as well, like Older Ravensguard, for example,
Oh.
who
Yeah.
plays a major element in the first portion of Baldur's Gate Descent into Avernus. He's the head of one of the alliances that you're trying to curry favor with. So this is a great getting to know you moment before heading into some of those plots.
Right. Yeah, I would love to mash it all up together in some way, right? To have some plot going up above and having another group be using the Tyranny of Dragons and thwarting Tiamat from coming to the Forgotten Realms, and another group below trying to be, no, she's got to stay here and fight us. You know, what's happening here?
Yeah, or help us.
Yeah.
In Descent into Avernus, you can reverse the roles a little bit and have Tiamat on your side.
What?
But in exchange for...
Unless you want something for trouble, yeah, of course.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but then there's that other group up above who's trying to...
But,
yeah.
lesser of 2 evils, so that's fathomable.
Is that? Would it be?
I'd help her.
You would help her?
Why is that?
Because I love female villains.
Oh, okay.
I just
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
I just think Tiamat's the coolest.
Yeah, well, she's a 5 and 1.
Did you meet my cat when you were at my house?
Yes.
She reminds me of Tiamat. Always.
5 heads.
She does not, but she acts like she does. There's
Oh,
just
okay.
something like about her personality.
An
that I feel like
imperiousness.
she's like very she rules.
Mm-hmm.
Breath weapons.
Yes.
Mhm.
Breath weapons.
She
Yeah.
just has like the same aura. I feel
She
like
definitely made
Tiamat
Chris
would have.
sick.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's right.
Yeah, you're a toxic cat.
That's right. And she's toxic. One of her many weapons. But
That's a
my-
Kesha song, right? Toxic? Wait, no, that's Britney Spears. Sorry.
No. Stop
So-
getting her confused with other pop stars.
That was a long walk home, by
Rude.
the way.
In the
In the
snow.
snow.
In the snow, in the blizzard. That was so sad.
I walked home from Shelley's house in the blizzard while trying to overcome my deathly allergy to cats.
Yes.
But my dog loved you.
Yes, we got along famously.
Puppy fell in love with Chris.
Yeah.
Oh, he's the coolest guy.
He's the coolest guy ever.
Your dog would scare the crap out of mine.
He would?
Yeah.
Puppy is the biggest wimp.
I know, but he's sort of big and like
Oh,
lumbery.
but he would just like run away from
Milo
Milo.
would just be overwhelmed.
We have a little like Maltese that lives next door, and Puppy's always like, "No, don't come at me, Juno. No." He would be fine. He's scared. He's scared of everything. Oh, and he has like barely any teeth now.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just like Tiamat.
Thank you, Wes.
Yeah.
You are feeling my pain, and
Sorry.
I understand that.
Sorry.
How could you
I told
incorporate
you-
devil dogs in your
There are no
campaign?
devil dogs in hell, right?
Why wouldn't there be?
You mean like the little hostess?
The hostess cupcakes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They were not called devil dogs, were they?
Is a thing called devil dogs, yeah.
That
There are
is
devil
the name.
dogs in D&D too.
Yes, I know that. I had to fight one once.
They're delicious.
Not devil
Yum.
dogs.
Devil the dogs. So yeah, I love that people going back can incorporate all this stuff, and I love that dragons is the theme of this, right? And that we really haven't touched on them a lot, and they've been characters in other adventures, but we haven't been like a dragon centric story.
Right.
Since
We haven't
Tyranny
had
of
a
Dragons.
tyranny of dragons before.
Right.
Exactly, where they have created a society, and that's why I also love that end state of them being like, okay, no, that actually succeeded.
Yeah.
And I would love to see people use the material that's in this to tell their own interesting story about like what happens after the apocalypse when the cult of the dragon succeeds and Tiamat comes into this world, and then what happens.
One of the other cool things about Tyranny of Dragons and the adventures that it basically brought together is you can also tear it apart and use just pieces of it. Like I have run from the Rise of Tiamat, the Oya Vegaton chapter as its own separate adventure. That's the one where you go to this glacier that the white dragon Arathator has taken as its lair. And there's like a village of people who live on the island in the shadow of this chaotic, evil white dragon and manage to coexist with it. But it's an interesting place to stomp around. There are places like that throughout the adventures. The Karnath Roadhouse stands out as an interesting place. Castle Neratar, which is this half-sunk castle in the swamp. There's this hunting lodge I've used as a separate standalone adventure where one of the cult leaders abides.
That's really cool.
Yeah, this adventure is full of just interesting standalone places if
Was
you
it
want to use them that way.
Written that way, or that's just
No, but an
cool
intrepid DM
side effect.
can separate them off because they're like episodes,
Yeah,
in a show in a way. They kind of, sorry, this giant phallus in my way. They stand.
How the sausage gets made.
Yeah, exactly. They kind of stand. They have their own beginning, their own and their own end. These chapters with these locations. There's like and they're completely self-contained.
And I think that now that we're stringing them together, it's not just one book and then done.
Yeah.
And then you have to get another book and then
Right.
string it together. Now
Yeah.
you can go from episode to episode a little bit.
Yeah, a ton
more
of
smooth.
segues between these set pieces. I mean, one of the other nice things is that so often dragons I feel like a lot of DMs sort of keep their powder dry with dragons, where it's just like, oh, I need to save that for the boss monster or like for the end of the campaign. I mean, in this, you're getting that flavor and so many different variations of that flavor, whether it's different types of dragons or there's drakes in it, there's Dragonborn play a big role, there's dragon cultists. It's really dragons all the way down.
How do the Dragonborn play a role?
There's a couple of dragon cultists that are Dragonborn. They just have this close affinity to many of the dragons that they're worshiping, and since the cult of the dragon is so much about worshiping dragons, having these individuals that already are infused with dragonness, they're having in many places this heightened prestige because of that. So they're more influential figures or bosses or whatever.
We have the dragon's blood in us, so therefore we can speak with more authority.
Yeah.
Got it. That makes
Yep.
sense. I've also heard people who have taken each of the adventures that we've released for 5th edition, since they're all generally set in the Sword Coast area, and having them all happen simultaneously or having the big MacGuffin of each of them happen. And I'm really fascinated by that. I mean, we just talked about it with Descent into Avernus, how it relates to Tyranny of Dragons, but then having the demons be able to be coming up through the abyss at the same time, as well as
stomping around.
Yes, right, and then being able to get them to go against the dragons, and having a death curse happening at the same time, while you could get sucked into the mist. So there's, I feel like there's so much story that could be told now with the wealth of adventures that are out there, that I'd love for an intrepid DM to be able to weave them all together.
I love hearing about stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does it, as a storyteller, does that make your heart sing?
That warms my 5 hearts.
Interesting.
Your cold robot heart is beating stronger.
Right, yeah.
Slowly feel yourself rising off the
Squirt.
cold
Yeah.
Canadian ground. It
I know.
lifts you up.
Yeah.
That would be a really, I don't know how it would necessarily be presented. That would be more to your guys' job. But remember, it's a document that links all these and says, like, oh, this is how you could present it in a way that would go from, first level to 30th or whatever, or to 20th and then beyond.
Yeah. It's so ambitious, but it's an interesting challenge.
Yeah. And you could do it with multiple groups, too.
Oh, definitely.
Right? And have them
Yeah.
playing against each other and all that, having Shelley's group wanting to
Bring her up.
be there for the Zuggett Moy marriage.
Love her too.
Maybe she's marrying Tiamat.
Fine.
Aw.
Yeah.
Wedding of the century right there.
That's it. Power couple. Zzz. I mean,
Yes.
is that a couple if it's a 5 dragons with a demon queen?
She's a
Single-eyed,
single.
single-eyed
Yeah.
entity. I feel that.
Yeah.
What if you just married one of them? You're like, I'm only going to marry the blue head.
I'm really connected with the green head. I don't know.
That's like a Fairley Brothers movie right there.
Yeah. I think you'd have to be all in. You just can't.
No.
You
No.
can't pick and choose.
No.
No.
It's a
No.
package deal right there.
Yeah. Yeah. You have to take the whole individual.
I like that. I like
Yeah.
that. So October 22nd is when Tyranny of Dragons will be out. I'm excited. It's going to be only in game stores with the Hydro 74 cover. So if you are interested in picking it up, head to your local game store and make sure you tell them that you want it, and they will give you a copy. I think if you give them money, that's how stores work.
Yes.
Right.
Just say,
There's
give
an
me the big
exchange.
dragon book.
Give me the book. And you mentioned miniatures, and of course, WizKids and has produced Tiamat miniatures over the years, but I think the more recent one does a pretty good job of bringing her to life in 3D form.
Yep. Large and in charge.
Yeah.
I hope
Yep.
they bring that to, everybody who's got it will now be like, I've got a reason to use it again and bring people back to it. And I like the
Yes.
idea of revisiting something from 5 years ago, right? Like it is nice to, even if you did play it 5 years ago, to jump back in and pull elements from it or play it whole cloth.
And appreciate all the changes that Wes worked on.
Oh, and also, I mean, we haven't mentioned them yet, but Emmy Townji over on the art team and Chris Lindsay put together a great introduction for this book. They've both
Nice.
been incredible. Everybody who's been working on the project, Chris did a pass through the entire book at the absolute last minute,
Probably
which
took you
was
20
invaluable. About 25.
Yeah. About that.
Took a break in between.
He did it at 1.5 speed.
Yeah, it came out really sharp looking. I think we're all really proud of it.
That's cool. So tell me about the introduction. You said Chris Lindsay was working on that. What is
so went through, and since Chris Lindsay has been here for thousands of years,
He's a lich.
he went through and was somebody who could look back at how the game was when this adventure was initially incepted, how things have changed over the last few years, charting some of that out, and really playing up how this is a special adventure for the edition. This is the first one, how it is a big deal, and outlining some of the changes we've made to, continue to have it be this special experience for the edition.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool. And of course, Emmy does amazing work.
Is
with
a
everything she touches.
Complete miracle worker.
Yeah,
yeah.
She did incredible on the entire thing. I think folks in particular, maybe this is just some of us goobing out about the layout and whatnot, but the bestiary in this book is really something special. I think
Yeah.
folks will be excited about it.
Oh yeah. What
It's just
brings it to life?
The layout.
The layout.
The splendid marriage of art and text.
Oh.
Ooh. I like that you elevated that. You're like the splendid
going to go look
marriage.
at it.
Your monocle popped out.
You should be an officiant at a wedding? Do you ever officiate weddings?
No.
You're still going back on the Zagat Moy team at wedding. You're like, would you like
I
to?
got some friends that are looking for an officiant. It's a little bit untraditional.
There's a lot of wine. They will be
And
drinking a lot of wine.
A lot of
so there's a lot
spores.
of heads.
A lot of spores.
Yes.
But yes, I love Emmy's work, and she's been being a dungeon master now. So inspiration for
I got
Shelley,
to
even
play
more
with her.
so.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, she makes me look nice.
She was having some fun for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
She-
exactly.
She's a murderous DM.
Really, she's not as kind as
It's
she
always
looks.
the nice one.
It's that sort of gentle, kind facade just falls away as soon as she gets behind the screen.
And she smiles as she's like murdering.
Yeah.
You're dead.
Sorry.
You take 400 points of damage.
Sorry.
Hold on, she asked me to play at her table. I thought she was being nice. Nah. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm not going to think about that anymore.
What kind of DM are you, Wes? What's your style? Murderous?
No, generally not too much. I run a lot of horror games. So, like, my big thing is setting up a horrible situation and then, like, watching my players make it worse.
Oh,
Yeah.
nice.
So, yeah.
So murderous. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, maybe.
Wait,
so.
it's psychologically murderous. I like
Okay.
it. Well, thank you. I am so glad that you guys were able to take the time to talk through this product. I'm really excited about it coming out. And, Wes, it's good to introduce you
To meet you.
to everyone here
Absolutely.
on the podcast. So
Yeah,
we'll be
thanks for
talking to you
having
more
me.
going forward.
Sounds great.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
We are going to take a short break, everyone watching on the Twitches. Thank you for everyone who's been watching. We will be back in just a couple of minutes with Jeremy Crawford talking through some fun mechanical things. I don't even know what topic we're going to do. What should we ask him about, guys?
Robot costumes.
Costumes.
We're just going to dive
What did
deep
you
on
say
that.
you should do a lore you should know about?
Oh, I don't remember. That was like 20
Cult of
minutes
the
ago.
We'll have to-
Dragon?
no, it was about-
Tiamat biology.
Oh, no, Draconians. It was like
Draconians,
the life
yeah.
cycle of Draconians.
Yeah. Where did draconian babies come from?
Yeah, I'm so horrified.
We've already
about
done a troll
where
one.
beholder babies come from.
What you just dream about. Another
Still.
beholder.
Whoop, and there it is.
Yeah. I just randomly saw, and we're going to sign off in a second, but I just randomly saw a video of an octopus dreaming. And it's changing colors as it's dreaming.
that's so
And
romantic.
I thought of beholders. I thought of all of our monsters. And I was like, what happens when they dream?
Little known fact, but if there's any truth at all to reincarnation and coming back in the world, I want to come back as an octopus.
Me too.
Yeah.
I love them.
Yeah.
I want to come back as a beholder.
Me too.
Me too. I love
them.
them. I want to come back as Tiamat.
There's a little bit of similarities between them.
All right. We'll be back in just a couple minutes, you guys.
Bye.